Welcome to the CEO Stylist podcast, where two unlikely CEOs come together and rewrite the narrative of what it means to be a CEO stylist. Yovanka Loria and Kirsten Harris are on a mission, giving stylists permission to join the movement of artists breaking the mould of what is meant to be for the hair industry and creating the life and schedule of their dreams. Fast forward through many failed attempts and lessons learned in the process, it's time to level up the playing field. It's time to call BS on what's been done before. Yovanka and Kirsten are ready to share it all, defying the odds of the industry and teaching you how to do the same.
Welcome to the CEO Stylist. I'm your co-host Kirsten, and with me today I've got my bestie Yovanka.
Hi. It sounds so weird when you call me Yovanka.
I know.
I sound like I'm in trouble.
Today we've got a really big topic, and I apologize in advance because this is going to be a bit of a heavy one, and I think it's going to land for a lot of our female listeners and I'm generalizing here when I say this, but the topic that we want to talk about today is overcoming mum guilt. And I want to preface that by going, mum guilt is really parent guilt, right? Because there's plenty of single dads out there as well that are navigating work, life, kids, all of that, as well as women. But I guess for us to have this chat, we're going to come from a place of experience for both of us. We both have kids, and we're going to, talk about our children a little bit more. And we've got definitely different age kids and, our own personal experiences around navigating the mum guilt, because it's real and raw and it fucking hurts at times. And you feel like a shitty human being and you're in a place and you want to be somewhere else and all of that negative head talk. So for those that want to tap out because it's triggering, we totally get it. But we really hope that this episode today helps.
Because I know, when we first met, that's what I was like, listening to your stories, and I hear it so much out there. Like, I started my entrepreneurial journey when my kids were in school. But listening to your story and so many others who pretty much have their baby and, they only get, 3 months or 3 weeks, and some are even back at work if they're running their own business. And this just goes back to, it doesn't matter what stage, mum guilt, no one prepares you for mum guilt.
No.
Right? If you're working for someone, it's leaving your child, like leaving them, whether it's for work honestly, like having your business, like I think back now, what I've had to take on my plate, I honestly feel for other mums who are doing it when their kids are little, because it's hard to be in all places at once.
It really is. I think that probably triggers wanting to share, my story a little bit, to give a little bit of background, coming from a place of experience that my husband and I were living in Melbourne. Melbourne's not our place of home. We had no family, and our support network was him and I and a nanny, because we were in a privileged situation that we could afford a nanny. Afford is an interesting word. We had no choice because we both chose career paths. We had no help. So I'm kind of jumping, right? Because the nanny only came around when we had baby number 2, and we've got a 5-year gap between our kids. But if I take it back to baby number 1, I was in a position where I had to travel very regularly, and they weren't like interstate trips. It was overseas most of the time. And my boss, like, I was a partner in that business, and my boss was international based, and talking about maternity leave. They had no regard for rules here around how pregnant are you and when are you coming back for work, because that was the only conversation that really happened. Like, how long do you need to have it off and when will you be back to work? So, there was that enormous pressure about.
So how long did you have off?
Well, in the end, I had 9 months off, but that wasn't that. And that I really I want to take this back by saying that the arrangement that my husband and I had when I was pregnant, he was going to stay home and look after our son, and I was going back to work within 6 weeks.
Wow.
And then turns out, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners will relate to this, we're never prepared. Like, despite all the books and whatever else you read, we're never quite prepared
I feel like we're psychologically wired in our brain,
Yeah.
no matter how much we're doing, the feeling's normal.
Yeah, but I think what caught me by surprise was how much I really wanted to stay home and spend that time with my
Mm,
son.
of
Really wanted
course.
to, like it. And so that's what I went about doing. It was like the risk was low for me in the sense that I actually didn't care
Mm,
what the consequences were going to be. And they were massive for me in the end, making that choice. But I wanted this because I knew that, you know, from my strong sense of family value, I'll never get that time back.
mm,
So it was really different experience because I felt like it was, you know, from a place of I didn't regard what was going on in the workplace. Yeah, I had a little bit of that FOMO because it was the only thing before you have your first child and you're in your career. That's all you have, right? You can be very selfish in your day. You can come and go as you please, eat when you like. You throw a baby in the mix, and you're still building your career. And I was 27, so I was still really young. I didn't like I stopped, and I felt very privileged that I could stop and really spend that time with Tristan as a baby and really build that bond. So I didn't have that guilt back then. I had other consequences that were really unfortunate in that work environment for making that decision, but I never regretted it. Fast forward to baby number 2, a 5-year gap. I was in a completely different position and we had our own business then. And I'm having a baby, and actually, I'm having a baby. It was Friday night. I'm being induced on Saturday. I wasn't telling anyone. Everyone's like, bye, see you. You know, that typical, have a great weekend. See you on Monday. Are you doing anything this weekend? No, no, I'm having a baby tomorrow. I didn't tell my team.
funny. That is hilarious.
So how ridiculous is this, right? Like, what message am I sending myself? I'm walking out of the office on a Friday night, walking into the hospital on Saturday to be induced. I gave birth naturally. It's not like I was having a cesarean. Like, you know, doesn't matter how we give birth, by the way, but it was like I was literally walking into the office, into the hospital the following morning to have a child. I was sitting in my bed because the messaging in my brain then, because I flipped from being a partner in a business to now I'm the owner of a business fully,
Mm,
that I had team and I had offices. I don't know what I was thinking. I'm sitting there in my bed in hospital
crazy.
working,
Mm,
trying to balance this. And that was the slippery slope
yeah, for
for me.
sure.
Yeah.
I actually didn't know that about you with
Which part?
okay, that part when you
Oh,
had
that part, like I'm out of the office on Friday night having a baby. Yeah, I wanted, do you know what it was? This is the most ridiculous thing. I wanted to prove that I could do it all.
Mm. When you have so much responsibility, I feel like, you know, you also have responsibility to other people as well.
You know, now my older, mature head, it's like, what message was I giving my people back then that you can just walk out of the office on a Friday night and have a baby the
Deliver a
following morning?
baby. My
And
God.
then like, just pass me my laptop and I'll keep working.
So then with
Really.
Taya, how long did you have off for the second for her?
Well, I was working in the hospital.
Yeah, but did you actually take some time off? No, you went straight back. Wow. James was looking after her, the nanny?
She came. No, we didn't have a nanny then.
She
She
came
came.
with you to work?
Yeah, she really did. And so we got to about, and then this is where we'll flip to mum guilt. So one thing I'm really lucky, I didn't suffer postnatal depression that I know of. So imagine if I was, you know, in that situation where I was confronted, there is absolutely no way that you could
Mhm.
be in a position from everything I've read, listened to, talked to people, friends in my circle that have suffered.
Mm.
Like I was very fortunate like that I
That you
didn't.
go through
And
that.
I went through it. She came to the office. She like just had to blend in. Tristan was 5 years older and at school at that point, right? So we're trying to live this normal life. And she sat under my office, not sat, she was in her bassinet, but until she was about 12 weeks and developed a voice and was noisy. And then I became mindful of what this was like for it seems just so ridiculous, even now talking about it, like what message was I sending to my team back then about trying to be a hero and do it all. But the mum guilt for me really, really set in. It was horrific when I had to send her to childcare.
Mm.
And so she was in a beautiful, nurturing place, but every day walking out of that childcare.
Nobody prepares you for that.
Leaving that tiny baby going, what the fuck am I doing? But I had to work. So the pressure was on. So yeah, that's really my story. So,
and I hear that all the time. Like I'm, like I said, it's so, now, well, I think this happened a long time ago where, women really don't have that privilege anymore of being able to stay home, for so long, because there's so much pressure. And then you can see that's what happened to me. So that's my story, where my husband, Vlad, who's amazing, who we work together now, but he was the one, pulling 7 days a week, working 7 days a week. And I was very fortunate enough to be able to stay home with the kids. But I was very much like you. There was that burning passion. Like I've always loved my career, but I took a sideline from my career and I was only working a couple of days a week. So to me, that was like my little social outing at that point. I was still working for someone. I was still, thinking about what I was going to do next, but it wasn't, really prevalent at that point yet, because I started, to just jump on social media then, and it was like a whole new world for me.
Yeah.
But for me, I have two kids. So I have David and Taya, and David's now 14, Taya's 12. But she was always, she's still so attached to me. You've seen her, even now she's 12 and she's still sometimes like, Mum, can you sleep with me? And it's like, oh my God, when is this going to end? As much as I love her, but she was very, very, very attached to me. So, someone like me who I wasn't really maternal, to be really honest. I used to look at other kids and I'll be like, oh, they just, mostly they were annoying. And when I had my own kids, obviously they just softened me up. I became like a little butterball, from being this like really hardcore, hard-headed, stubborn, very career-driven. And, something in me changed. But then also I saw Vlad busting his balls, working 7 days a week. And that was when I first started thinking, I really need to do something. But I was shitting myself and I was like, oh, I would really love to have a salon. I'd really love to do this. And I kept asking, other mums. I was going around like, how do you do it? Like, what's it like? And I reckon for a good year, I was just asking, sitting on the sidelines.
There's no easy way around it, right?
But I was just, like the limiting beliefs and the self-talk on how the hell am I going to do it? And I was just really scared to take that, that initial first step. So, this is when I started to explore or think about starting to explore the world of hair extensions. And, there was no course here in Adelaide, so I had to travel. The course that I wanted to do was out in America. So obviously David and Taya, I think they were around 5 and 6 at that time. So I had to go to Melbourne. And this is like the most mum guilt I ever felt, because for me to go do this course in Melbourne, it would have cost me a few thousand. And I remember having that conversation with the lady that I was going to go do the course with. And I kept saying, what if this doesn't work? What if this doesn't work? You just feel so guilty because you're like, and coming from my European background as well. And, this, because I saw my mum always being, the last.
Put ourselves last. It's even like when we serve food, right? Serve everyone else, serve us last.
Exactly.
Yep.
And my mum was that typical European mum. She worked maybe for a couple of years, but Dad was always a breadwinner. She was always putting, everybody but herself, she was putting herself last. And I remember very young thinking, I don't want to be like that when I'm older. And I guess I was always very career driven.
Are you nervous about judgment in that as well, in your family?
I think subconsciously, absolutely. Yeah. Because what if it doesn't work? It's going to impact my family. We didn't have the money because we were like Vlad was self-employed, but it's a struggle because that whole thing with self-employment, you think you're doing great, then you pay tax and kids and this and that, and we're living up in the Adelaide Hills as well. So traveling back down, the logistics of how I was going to get help with my family, and my parents were a little bit older. So that's the voices inside your head just get louder and louder. And I nearly backed out, but thank God, my husband was like, babe, just stop, like, go do it. You're amazing at what you do. It's money at the end of the day. We've made it, we've lost it, we'll do it again. So
Yeah.
that was a real pivotal point, because now that I'm in a position where I speak to other stylists who are in my position, and especially what's going on in today's climate, I
Mhm.
hear it all the time. They get off the phone, they'll get back on and say, like, my husband, we don't have the money. We don't, everyone's so afraid to make the initial investment.
Yeah.
And this is someone coming from me, that I had to put that investment on my credit card. We
Yeah.
didn't have the money. Now imagine where I am now. I think we spoke about this in one of our first few episodes, is taking a bet on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the underlying issue is that chronic mum guilt that nobody prepares you for. And I think I had to give myself permission. And obviously, thank God, my husband gave me permission, because it was a very cornerstone to what really changed. Who would have thought a simple extension course would really change my life?
Yeah, absolutely. What was the beginning of something?
It was the beginning of something, but I came back, and that's when, we ended up finding a house, because I was like, if I'm going to do this, we're going to do it properly. And I thought, if I am going to do this, and again, for me, we just made a decision to buy a house where I had the opportunity to build the salon around my home, because I was like, if I am going to do this, I don't really want to not have my kids around me. So I think I was very lucky in that sense. I
Yeah.
think now that I look back, that gave me the courage to be able to do what I did, because I knew I still had access to my kids, or they had access to me.
Yeah, which was very different from my experience.
Very, very different. It's so different. And to be really honest, if I look back now, and if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have gone ahead with it, which is so crazy.
Mine was really like being in Melbourne and not having family, and James and I, we both like living in Melbourne's really expensive. So we both, and the strong sense of values, what I think the lesson that it taught us, and to protect us from judgment of others, because I decided to change career paths when Taya was virtually newborn. We were coming to the end of the line with that business. It was something that was not serving us as a family. We were both working in it, and circumstances, changes when you've got kids. So what was centered to us was, we had the same issue living in Melbourne, and inevitably where I ended up in that job, back in employment, going from being the employer to now being an employee, moving to Boost Juice Bars, that was a long way. Logistically, it was a long way from home. And so for me, it was like, well, if we're going to do this, we had to really reevaluate our family values. So we have self values, right? But then, and that navigating that whole mum guilt is really something that's not that I want to take away from the dads here, but it's something we're giving birth, and
Different connection.
It's a different connection. So we had to reevaluate our family values together as a family, with a newborn and a 5-year-old that was just starting school. He was at a private school that had its own conditions as well. That school required one of the parents to go and read readers and, contribute 18 hours a term, essentially what it was. I wasn't in a position to do that. Neither was James.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to make the decision to bring in a third set of hands. It was the only way that we were going to navigate. And so I had to give up any form of guilt. And what helped me in that moment was centered to our family values.
Making sacrifices for the betterment of your family and what you were going to achieve for yourself.
Yeah, that's it. Because, that led to such an incredible career path for me. But it was pretty common. It did put a lot of pressure on us early on. Like, it was long hours. I was an hour's drive from home. Yeah, it was insane. And then we had the extra pressure of what we had to contribute to Tristan's school early on as well. So, and then it kind of like there was some cracks appearing, I guess, because we were both, James and I both worked over the other side. When I say over the other side of Balti Bridge, our Melbourne viewers will know we were living western suburbs at that point. Our offices were east, so it was a long drive.
When I just hear that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I often joke I can't even get to my lounge room on time. The fact that you had to give out, back then there was no podcast, you couldn't listen to podcasts on the way. Probably didn't even have mobile phones. You had the flip mobile phones.
It was It was 17 years ago. We had mobiles.
Hang on. Did you have the iPhones? Was it the flip phones? It wasn't like Bluetooth where you can speak to someone in the car
Oh,
then.
look, I can tell you back then we could put a phone to our ear.
Oh,
We
you couldn't
definitely had
drive
mobile.
and talk. You couldn't drive and talk.
Definitely you could drive and talk back then, like early on. Yep, definitely. I'm
my
sure.
God.
I'm sure when I'd had
2 hours. I know that sounded so bad. Like
I know, but
was back in the day, the flip Motorola phone.
maybe there was iPhones back then, the beginning of. I definitely remember Facebook was a thing, like just because I remember being in the office at Boost and going, what's this Facebook thing? Like, do I create a profile?
Hang on a sec. You would lose 2 hours a day just commuting.
Yes.
Yeah, crazy.
Both of us. James's office was even further.
It's just so we have a clearer idea. So you would literally leave home at what, like 6:30?
Oh my God. Okay, so this is where mum guilt really kicks in. So we've got a little boy that's in reception at school, and we have to utilize before school care and after school care for like a 5-year-old plus a nanny. And we had to navigate that like logistically, but also emotionally, because, you know, we're leaving home. He had to be in order for me to get across the other side to the office, he had to be at before school care by 7:30. It's a lot for a little kid. So that mum guilt like kicked in. I'd get up and go to gym before all of that, because one of my personal values and something that I'd set for myself was I need to start my day by exercising. Up at 4:30, go to the gym, get there at 5. Like, it was just a short way of killing yourself, really.
And by the time you got home, would you have to cook dinner as well?
Oh yeah, like it was, yeah, definitely. So we, with Tristan, like he was having breakfast at school, which I was really grateful for. Really grateful, really, for that school that he went to. Trying to navigate Melbourne traffic, which is just shit.
Insane.
Get to the office, you know, make sure you don't lose your head in a high pressure situation, a growing business back then. And at the other end of the day, like shit needed to be done. And commonly I was still in the office at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. Like it's just the job had to get done. And I was recreating my career path as well. So I really felt like I had to prove myself to my peers. So that message back then was you've got to put in the hours, because what was ingrained in me, if you want to get somewhere in life, you had to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what that was. So very common it would be, James, well, the nanny's gone. What time are you going to be home? Thankfully, I have a husband that can cook, and, you know, he was amazing at it. So, and we were very fortunate when we had that extra set of hands. I'd make sure there was food, and she would cook for the kids. So it's not like the kids were left
with no food.
So that guilt switch turned back on when I get in the car at 7 o'clock and I've got an hour's drive and I've missed the kids before they go to bed.
Yeah. Ouch. Yeah. I can imagine. And would the kids ever say anything like, Mummy, I want to see you more?
Look, Taya was the baby, so she had no clue what was going on, really. Look, no, Tristan was pretty resilient. Like he was, because he had grown up.
I didn't really know any other way.
No, because he used to go to full-time childcare anyway. So he did a full-time kinder program there. So he didn't know it any other way. It was just a very long day for a little
Oh my
kid.
God, I'm exhausted just listening to you. I think my days were exhausting. But I really love what you said about the values, because this is what really changed. And I'm excited to share this part.
That was absolute key to navigating my way without ending in a mess. And there were days, like, don't get me wrong, as strong as you can be, that I cried most days leaving Taya at childcare, walking out the door going, the fuck am I doing? Like,
but you just had to put that mask on, and you
had to put up. Yeah, but I came back to family values. What is it that we agreed on as a family? And that's what kept me in that
belief. And it was also belief system, right? So with me, it's interesting that you speak about values, because back then, when I came back and I was implementing these extensions and we came here and we moved, I ended up going to do my first personal development course with he's an Adelaide guy called Michael Johnston, Mojo Master. And it was a 4-day event. And again, this was, I did it with Tuba, which you know Tuba, she's one of your clients as well, and one of our clients, one of our really good friends. Tuba K, we need to give her a shout out. Tuba K Activewear, absolutely. She was with us from the very early on, beginning days when I didn't even have my own hair extensions. So very, very grateful for her. And we went on a personal journey together to do this course, and it was a 4-day event. And it was from, 8 o'clock in the morning. We were there till like 2, 3 in the morning. Again, leaving our kids and our families, for 4 days to really, make some really life-changing shifts with mindset. And, we had to learn about a value system. And when I first learned about value system, like I was, understanding, like I had around about like it was more my beliefs, but I didn't really understand what my own personal values were. Because again, there's very different personal values and there's business values that now I can separate them, but they still align. Whereas with my personal values, I really had to learn. And the question is, what are your values? And, in the beginning, you don't even stop to think because you never really, ask yourself what your values are. My values were embedded from my family, from what other people thought, because I was putting on my value system. So it's a hierarchy of your value system, but it's very tricky because if you're not conscious or aware of it, you're really living everyone else's values, not your own values.
That's it.
And this is where, this comes down to now separating. We all know what mum guilt is, we all have it, but now how do you take it out and separate it so that you can live your values and not feel like a shitty person, not feel like you're, being judged? Because again, from me, just to go back to with my parents, when you asked me, did I feel judged? Absolutely, because my mum and dad come from the school of where to this day they do everything together. So when I was leaving my husband to go to Melbourne, I was even scared. I wasn't even wanting to tell anyone because I was going to be judged, and I had to cop shit from them. Why are you going without your husband? Like, they're thinking you're going to have an affair. Or God knows what these people were thinking.
Home, in the kitchen, cooking for your family.
In the kitchen, cooking for your family. And that is something that I really had to work, because once I understood the hierarchy of my value system, you become a lot more confident in yourself and what you're after. And then also, once you break it down, like for me, just to give you an example, my value system, was my kids first, or my husband, and then, down the list is everything else but the things that really, motivate and drive you, because you kind of lose yourself in that mum mode as well. You kind of lose yourself.
Yeah.
And I can see how, women get postpartum and they stay in that because you really, lose your identity in a sort of way. But once I really got down to what fills my cup, what drives me, and it's not tangible things. It has to be like, what drives you at your core, what's going to motivate you. Because once you know your value system, and it's not in the order of your family, it's what's going to make you happy. By the time, and my family are still on my value system, but it's not the top one, because the top one is what's going to fulfill me. Whereas my kids are my values, but it's kind of disconnecting of what fulfills your cup, right? Because by the time, what happens generally is that you're living life to please everyone else's values, and by the end of the day, you've got nothing left to give yourself. So that's why you end up being disconnected. You end up, can fall into depression and all things. You end up being really generally unhappy, and you're resentful because you're living everyone else's values, right? And this is also where it gets tricky, because, let's flip this on a, reality side. If you start living your values and living in your power based on what we were saying with, our previous episode, like this is what true power is, because once you find your voice and you start living your values, then by the time at the end of the day, by the time you get to your family and your husband, you're fulfilled. So you're happy, the way you move, the energy, like you're generally have a lot more, my whole demeanor kind of changed. But this is where it can also go wrong, is that when you start living your values, guess what? Other people are going to make you feel guilty.
Yes.
Other people are going to tell you that you're wrong because you're not living their values anymore.
Yeah. And let's just throw in, for example, and I speak from experience. I've got, Tristan's now, that baby I talked about when I first started working. is 22 and a half, and my daughter's 17. So I'm at a very different stage of that parenting life. It's really fun. And, James and I pat ourselves on the back. I mean, we're far from done yet as parents, right? But seeing our adult child in Tristan in his, glory, I guess, and he's navigating his own career path, we know that we've done a good job. So despite, and the reason why I wanted to bring this up for the listeners with babies and that overwhelming mum guilt, it's not about, there's a few things I want to say here, but it's not about quantity of time that we spend with our kids. It's the quality of time. And that's what, like listening to you, I thought, this is what we did. We had some non-negotiables with the kids growing up. And one non-negotiable for James in particular was making sure he was present at Tristan's sport. That on the weekend was the first thing. And that's not always a reality in the service-based business. Like I can appreciate that would be really hard, but he made sure, because I was in situations where the businesses that I was working for, where they were open on Saturdays and sometimes Sundays. So that did require, me to be present in those businesses back then. But, that was a non-negotiable. That was one thing our family had set, non-negotiable. He's going to be at kids sport. So I know that there would never be a conversation at our table that you were never there. I tell you where the mum guilt potentially kicked in a little bit for me was showing up at school. And this kind of eked in a bit when they get older, right? So you do make friends around your kids and school and that kind of thing. But when you're that working mum and you're not hanging out at the school and you're not serving in the canteen with the other mums, and, your little boy comes home or your little girl comes home and says, Mummy, why aren't you working in the canteen with Johnny's mum? And it's like,
well, Mummy, why did you forget to bake cookies for that?
Yeah, you forgot. Or, you forgot to pack my lunch today. Fuck, I've done that a couple of times. I mean,
it doesn't
make me a bad mother. Or, you're trying to get things ready the night before. Thank goodness we lived in Melbourne back then when the supermarket was closed, never closed. So, 10 o'clock at night and I'm trying to pack lunches and I'm like, shit, we've run out of this. So, trying to work that out. But, that was one thing, like, looking at our kids now, we pat ourselves on the back and go, we've done a damn good job, regardless of the choice that we made in our career paths. Our kids have turned out okay.
Here's the thing: you're also doing something to fulfill your cup.
Yes,
and that's important. This is important in the message. Once you're doing that way, when you do spend quality time with your kids, like you say, it's quality.
It's quality over quantity. You don't have to be there for everything, but be there for the important things.
100%.
That's like working that out. Tristan was very sport focused growing up. So, and like James, that was 100%. And I say James because I can't say I was there present for every sporting moment because I wasn't. But, it did, as the kids got older, he played cricket on a Friday night at the local cricket club. And that became a family event. Everyone would go there. We'd quite enjoy it. For those mums with boys that play cricket, we all know it's not over in an hour. Like we're talking, it goes on for a long time. So, that's really cool. And now, even now, like, our son still lives at home with us and we have dinner together most nights, mainly on the lounge these days. Terrible habit, but I love to have family dinner.
It's a way for you to connect.
Way for us to connect. Across the table, we have chats and it's just, I think it's very free flowing. So, and always the message I give myself is we've done a damn good job. We might not have been there 24/7 for these kids, but we've been able to provide a roof over their head, give them good food, give them a great education. We're good parents. Like we're not perfect.
Of course.
Like we've fucked up, I'm sure, but we've done
a great job. You really, really do have beautiful.
So you remove that and then you get to enjoy when they get older and go, we've done okay. And you get to enjoy that. But it's this, when they're little and it's the pressure, I think really to your point before, the pressure comes from judgment on the outside.
1,000%.
And comparison, really. comparison, like this one doesn't work, you know.
Sure. And I think, that's why I like to call it work-life integration, not work-life
I
balance.
like that. I really like
Right?
that. It really is. So the work-life balance, such a bullshit term, isn't it?
Thank God. I agree as well. It really, really is. For me, it's about work-life integration. And to put this in perspective for our listeners as well, once the way that I operate, and I have 3 specific buckets, that are most important to me and that will help me reach my goals. So apart from the values, I have my 3 buckets, and then the process of building out those weekly habits in each bucket so that I can reach my goals. So
are you prepared to share what your buckets are?
Yeah, so my buckets have changed a little bit coming back, because I was looking at my buckets from after coming back from Bali. So, but they're still, pretty much, mine is my family, my work, and personal development. They're my 3 buckets.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're my top 3. And anything outside, and you know what I'm like, even with socializing, it's really not on my bucket. So I don't really socialize a lot. And I do it, but within the restraints of, my work-life integration. Because I always say, you're always like, do you ever socialize? I'm like, I like to be invited, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to come.
Well, I guess the dynamic in our workspace is quite different. I work solo.
That's right.
My team work in their own offices. So I do crave that people.
As where I'm opposite, because in my workflow, I'm around people. I talk all day long. Then when I finish, I'm with my family. And then at nighttime, I spend it with Vlad, or that's where I do my thing and I recharge and recoup.
Yeah.
So they're my 3 buckets. And, the thing is also that I realized a long time ago, and I still give myself grace within those 3 buckets, because sometimes not each bucket is going to be filled the same each week. Right? And you know that as well. That's why even with my team, I'm very transparent about, my kids and what I have to do. And that's why I ended up having to build out a team, because I wasn't able to build and grow and do everything that I wanted to do had I just kept that little, hat on. But then also, once you're spinning all the plates in your business as well, you really have to narrow that down and learn how to do, delete, and delegate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
My buckets are same but different. I've got an extra one that that is one that I set after I had Tristan. So him, he's 22 and a half, was around health, and that came from a place of being unhealthy. So that's a non-negotiable for me on a daily basis. So I was extremely overweight when I'd had him. And that was lifestyle. That was, to that point of burnout where I'm eating dinner at 10 o'clock at night, and I'm, in the office, going across, getting whatever for breakfast.
You had to have what you could on the go.
Adrenaline junkie, needed something again at 10:30.
And if you think about it, to sustain that pace.
I know. That's why I had to feed it. And that feed, it made me so unhealthy. So that my bucket was, in that moment after I had him, was I needed to get my health back on track. It turns out that that's just part of my daily routine now. So that's how I choose to start my day.
It has to be on your value system in order for you to accomplish something. But,
it's not for everyone. It depends on their stage. Like for me, the sacrifice was sleep, of all things. Like, he was a baby. The only way I was going to fit that in to my life is to wake up early and do it.
Which ironically now, back then, did you have to set an alarm to wake yourself up?
Yes.
No.
It turns out I have to come back to set an alarm. Like I'm finding it, the closer I get to 50, I'm like,
really?
Yeah, I do naturally wake up early, but it's not always, I have to still set an alarm. Like I wouldn't rely on self-waking.
As far as I have this built-in alarm clock that just wakes me up between 4 and 5.
Yeah.
I've
got the cat
too.
Don't forget the cat. Like she's a pretty good, her body clock at 5 a.m. says that she needs to be fed. So that's,
she's your backup. She's your backup alarm.
She's my backup. So yeah, that's one of my buckets as well. And the one that I'm developing a muscle on more is, I guess, around self, the journaling, the personal development side. I love learning, but I probably have put that to the side a little bit up
Sure.
until, the last couple of years. And of course, we've spoken about this before with our Bali retreat, coming back and journaling, and that's still a work in progress for me.
Same.
But I think that would probably be a takeaway that I'd give our listeners to try and navigate where to start with this. Just journal your thoughts, get it all out of your head, and
it really helps you get super, super clear.
No one can really figure this out except for you. You can talk to other people and get perspective.
Do your value system. I might drop in the show notes the value system that I use for myself. I actually use it for my team when I'm onboarding a team member. I do a value system, and it takes a minute because you have to really think about it and you start categorizing. So when you're doing your values is, what do you think about mostly? What do you spend your time on? Like, what do you spend your money? And you start really noticing a pattern. And that's how you because it's the most difficult part is finding the category of it, because then you have a whole list of things, but then you start listing them out, and then you start asking, right, so what's more important to me? Do I put my gym or my family first? And then you work out, then you start building it in category, which one, and it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's what do you want to do.
That's it. And that's you've got to figure that one out.
You got to figure, because that's the whole thing, is that if you're not congruent with your value system is when shit starts to fall apart. Right? And just being a mum, doesn't mean, and, no disrespect to any mum out there who, has the privilege or wants to stay home with their kid. But for me, after 4 or 5 years of being home and, just dabbling in work, I was ready. I was like, I'm actually ready to go back out there and, do something that's going to make an impact. Because to me, I don't know if anyone else feels the same out there, but if I'm a mum 24/7, I'm not going to be the best human that I'm going to be. And if I'm going to work and I'm working 24/7, I'm not going to be the best human either. So it really is finding the thing that really, lights your soul up, because my kids and my husband, and I think everyone that's around me now genuinely knows, they see it in me. Like, I genuinely wake up so grateful. I'm very rarely stressed. And if I am, it's very, I have my moments. It's like maybe twice a year where I can handle my stress a lot better. And also with the value system, I don't get triggered as much. I mean, there's some things that trigger me, let's be real. And you have to really filter it in, because you're human. It's not like a light switch. It's a forever thing that you're going to have to work on forever. But it's really centered me. It's really calmed me. I know who I am. I know what I stand for, and I know where I'm going. I'm so clear in it, and I'm pretty much become unshakable. And I'll tell you a little quick story as well, like how I knew that this is so powerful. Because before, when you're living, your life, like now I can see with my parents, because their values are different to my values now. They're older now. They crave connection and time. And, in the beginning when I first started this, why are you always working? And, why? And before, if I didn't know my value system, I would get really triggered and get really pissed off, lose my shit, and then hang up. Or they would hang up on me because they were like, you're a psycho bitch, because you're not having that clear dialogue and you're not understanding people's value system. Whereas now I can really, really understand where they're coming from. And also with that, I don't get triggered. And I'm like, I come from a place of love and understanding, and I just explain it. Like, Mum, Dad, I know, that you want to see us, but I'm really working. Like, this is, something that's really, really important to me. As where I would never have explained that a few years ago.
Because that was one thing that I was going to leave our listeners with. That place of understanding comes from understanding self first.
1,000%.
You need to get to know, and I think that there's no right age, like, for our listeners. I'm nearly 50, and
there's never a finish line.
Constantly the student, right, of self-learning, but I've probably stepped into my power more in recent months than anything else. And what I said about that to myself was, I didn't give myself permission early on to get to know myself, to work out what my values were. And I don't want to live in that regret. And what if I had because giving myself permission meant giving myself the time And I was kind of on this hamster wheel. I was stuck on this hamster wheel. I was trying to prove to the world that I'm going to be the best mum and the best career and boss bitch and all that shit. And really, like, I lost to what you're saying before, you can quickly lose yourself in that. So
and then it becomes something else that you don't even know where it was created from.
no, so yeah, that journaling and you coming from that place of understanding with your family is because you did the work with yourself.
Absolutely.
To understand you. So that's all I've got to say on that. So journaling, give yourself the time and space. And I'm not like, I guess where I'm coming is, if you have to put an appointment in your diary because that's the way you operate, then go right ahead and do what you need to do to create that time and space and get to know you. And it is going to take some time. And it starts with, like, it does start with the meditating and not being distracted by devices or little humans or big humans or anything else, but it's just really getting comfortable with you and yourself and being able to write some stuff down, get it out of your head.
That's right. And it doesn't matter what age, like, that's our biggest, she said it, so poetically the other day, it's never too late to recreate.
Never too late to recreate. It really isn't, but it's,
love that, because it's so true. It's never too late. Look, I say I took a left turn, in my late 30s, and look at what was around the corner. Had I not had that support, had I not, taken the challenge, had I not taken a bet on myself, had I not got to know my value system, that's why we're saying you could be that busy, mum or busy person running around, but you don't know, like, you're just running. You're running in circles, and, we hear it all the time, even with the young girls, they're all trying to figure it out. But when you ask someone, what are you doing to get to know what you want? Or what do you get to, if you ask someone if they're investing in personal development, a lot of people don't actually do it. They're self-soothing by watching Netflix, or they're self-soothing by, going out drinking, and that's fine. There's a time and a place for it as well. But I think, everyone that's going to be listening to our podcast is people that really want to, have that transformation in their life, really make a difference, really understand how to achieve their goals. And the goals is going to be so different for everyone. High performance, even hearing from you, I think that's embedded from schools. And I remember watching Dr. Phil once, and he was saying, I know, Dr. Phil, and he put it, and this is what I say, I use it with my kids all the time. If you're going to get grades and you're going to get A, B, or C, C grades will get you a C lifestyle. B grade will get you a B lifestyle, and an A will get you an A lifestyle. You just got to ask yourself, where do you want to sit in that frame, right? And who do you need to become in order to achieve what you want to achieve?
That's it. That's
right?
Powerful.
And I think this is a good place. Like, just because you're a mum doesn't mean that you're not capable. I always say to young girls now that I see that are pregnant, you just wait. You wait till you have kids. You actually realize how strong you are.
Yeah, because babies become little humans that become, 12 and 14. They become teens and they become adults. And I'm going to leave it with this. My mum said to me as a new parent, darling, small kids, small problems, big kids, big problems. And so, we have that little kids and little babies, they don't have voices, and then they develop their own personalities, and then they develop their own needs and wants, and then they get bigger and they demand more time. And bigger kids, teenagers need more time and effort, and bigger kids, they just need a parent to be present from time to time. So it's just really, if I had the wisdom that I had now, and I don't know whether it comes with age, or maybe if I'd given myself that permission to sit down and get to know myself
exactly, that's exactly
a decade ago. So yeah, that's where I want to leave it. Get your journals out, people. Get to know yourself. We'd love to hear. We'd love to get your feedback on this one. We said at the start of the podcast it was going to be a heavy one. We hope that it doesn't trigger negatively, but we would love to hear. Please reach out to us in our DMs on how this landed for you. We would love to help anyone. We're not psychologists, we're not, but we're definitely experienced in this journey of parenting and navigating, mum and mum guilt and running businesses and managing people and everyone wanting a bit of your time. So we're here. We're a good ear for that. I think, aren't we?
Would love to hear. Shoot us an email. Send us your stories in. I'm going to drop in the show notes your value system. It's an invitation for you to do the process. It will honestly change your life, and I hope it does, like it changed mine. So we hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you guys on the next one. And happy business building and happy life.
Yeah, go get them.
Go get them, girls.